Welcome to the show, sports fans. This is the Treasure Valley Prepcast on IdahoSports.com.
That's right. Welcome in another edition of the Treasure Valley Prepcast on IdahoSports.com, breaking down all the District 3 highlights, 5A all the way down to 1A D2, week in, week out in the Treasure Valley. My name is Brandon Baney. We are joined by Logan Green, as always. Logan, what's up? How you doing?
Hey, Brandon. Good. It was fun to get back into sports last week.
Yes, I feel like we have a little bit of a contrast here. You can, of course, listen to this podcast at IdahoSports.com, as well as wherever you download podcasts. You can watch the video version of this on the IdahoSports.com YouTube page. Also, our Facebook page is a place you can go for these prepcasts. And if you're watching the video version of this, you'll see I'm kind of in a well-lit room. The sun's shining a little bit through the window. Logan, meanwhile, is in a dark place.
Here, how's that? Is that better?
Yeah, there you go. We got a little light going now. Yes. Of course, I'm just giving you a hard time, Logan.
Like to be in the dungeon.
That's right. So it was a busy opening week of activity. We had golf, we had football, we had boys and girls soccer, volleyball and cross country get started this weekend. Fall sports, always the busiest time of the year with the most activities available for a student athlete to choose from. So let's start with what happened on the soccer pitch. And I want to start specifically, we are recording this Wednesday morning, August 23rd. I want to start with a match that was played last night, Tuesday night, August 22nd on the boys' side. Bishop Kelly traveling to Caldwell. We got an email from a Bishop Kelly fan, Logan, talking about some of the statewide roundtables we did last summer. And he is originally from Jerome, and now he is a parent at Bishop Kelly. So he sees both sides of the BK coin. And he said, I kind of enjoy BK being the heel to all of your guys' conversations
Sure.
that you have. He said he definitely understands. But he wanted to highlight this soccer match. Caldwell and Bishop Kelly are the last two state champions in boys soccer at the 4A level, and they've been the premier programs for the last, 4 or 5 years at least. They always seem to be right there in the mix. They met for the championship last fall, came down to penalty kicks. Caldwell won on PK, so the Cougars are your reigning champions. Caldwell did graduate a lot in the off season, but their program is so big, Logan, that they have not one, but two JV teams. So they have a JV1 and a JV2. So they've got plenty coming up the pipeline. Whereas BK also had this year its highest turnout ever for boys soccer. And so Bishop Kelly is loaded with all these seniors. And last year was supposed to be the quote unquote rebuild year, and they got all the way to the championship. So, my gosh, if it's not a rebuild year, what's BK going to do? They knocked out undefeated Sandpoint at state last year, the number 1 overall seed. So this was the matchup. Caldwell, Bishop Kelly. Big thanks to Oscar Class, Bishop Kelly fan and parent, for sending in an email. And he wanted us to talk about this match, Logan, and it definitely lived up to the hype. Caldwell gets the win last night, 2-1. It was a 0-0 contest at halftime, which means all of the activity occurred in the second half. What a game.
Yeah, you can't beat that. And you mentioned the rivalry, right? A lot of times in some sports you see, especially one fan base saying, is it a rivalry if we just beat you all the time, right? And this is not one of those, right? This is one where they've beaten each other. It seems like maybe Caldwell has gotten the upper leg when it matters, right? Like in a state championship situation, at least coming last year. So Bishop Kelly really wants to get that win, and Caldwell wants to keep them down, right? That's kind of the attitude between those two. And Caldwell, yeah, big win. And what a way to start your season, right? To start with that game. It's kind of Duke and Carolina don't start off playing week 0, right? The first game of the year. Ohio State, Michigan don't play then. So it's kind of interesting that they played the first game of the year.
Yeah, they both kind of warmed up with a match over the weekend of competition. Bishop Kelly is actually 1-1-1 on the season. The Knights tied Timberline. They played Timberline to a draw on Friday to open their season 1-1. Then they got a 2-0 win over Owyhee on Saturday. and then the loss to Caldwell. So Bishop Kelly's literally got a win, a loss, and a tie. Caldwell is 1-1 as well. They got the win over Bishop Kelly last night, of course, and they actually dropped their season opener to Wood River 4-2, which, was a little bit of an eye opener, I think, statewide. I think that was a game that they had to travel to Wood River, which is not an easy place to get to, right up there in the Sun Valley. But, it was a nice bounce back for Caldwell as well.
Yeah, it's because those two have been the better programs in the state, right? And you can't. It's hard to say. You can't count last year, right? It has no effect on this year. And the years before that, they have no, weight on this season. But you got to think that, first game, like you said, you go on a road trip somewhere where you're not used to playing, people you're not used to playing against, and maybe just weird stuff happen. But man, credit to Wood River, that's a huge win for them to put up 4 goals alone on Caldwell. Historically, it's got. I'd like to look at it. When's the last time somebody scored 4 goals on Caldwell? That's that alone is a feat. But then to take care of business too. So credit to them. But both teams look to be okay. Beating Owyhee tied Eagle as well earlier. Eagle beat Middleton. So it's there's a lot of mix up going on right now in SIC soccer of, well, I beat them, they beat me, they beat you, whoever. And it's just it's already a mess in week 1.
Yeah, for sure. Caldwell beat Bishop Kelly every time they played last year. We talked about the state championship. They met in districts. Caldwell won 2-0. Caldwell won the 2 regular season matchups, 1-0 and 2-0. So this gives you an idea of how close these matches have been. The last time Bishop Kelly got the upper hand on Caldwell was 2 years ago at state. They beat the Cougars 2-1. And so outside of that, Caldwell now on a 5-game winning streak against the Bishop Kelly Knights. So we will wait in anticipation for the rematch. We had the first round pretty early on in the season. Caldwell got the host. The rematch will come Thursday, September 14th, Logan, at Bishop Kelly. So there you go. Circle that on the old calendar.
Just a couple of weeks.
Yeah, and think about it. That could decide the 4A SIC race right there by middle of September.
Yeah,
pretty interesting.
Based on what we've seen, that might be the case.
Definitely. Other highlights from the boys soccer landscape. Columbia is off to a 1-0 start. They beat Emmett 4-1 last night in their season and conference opener. So Columbia and Caldwell right now and Ridgeview are all tied for first. They're all 1-0. Ridgeview picked up a nice win over Skyview 3-1 after dropping a match to Mountain View 4-1. So of course, these standings will change quite a bit as the season progresses, but that's how the 4A landscape is looking. If we look at 5A right now, you've got 5 teams that are currently undefeated, Logan. Centennial, Meridian, Timberline are all 2-0, including 1-0 in league play. Boise and Eagle are 1-0 and 1. So they're undefeated, right? They haven't lost, but they haven't won all their matches. I think coming into the season, you look at Timberline historically has been a strong program. Boise is always very strong. I think Eagle, people might be sleeping on a little bit as well. Eagle played last night and played a tough draw with Owyhee 2-2.
Yeah, they beat Middleton as well earlier in the week on a penalty kick in the second half. That broke the 1-1 tie. Middleton hit the post twice in the final 5 minutes of that one. Could have been a different story, but yeah, Eagle gets the win there, so they're off to a good start.
Yeah, that's what makes soccer such a great game, right? The post, you can come that close between scoring a goal and having it clank off, and
right.
Yeah, game of inches for sure. At the 3A level in boys soccer from the opening weekend, we saw Fruitland go 1-0. McCall Donnelly is 1-0-1, and nobody else has played yet. Fruitland beat Emmett 2-1, so they played up a level and got a 2-1 win. And McCall Donnelly, meanwhile, beat Lewiston 4-0, and then they tied Coeur d'Alene Charter. So McCall Donnelly, I mean, based upon the schedule they've put
Yeah.
together, Logan, they think, okay, this is the team. They've hosted Lewiston, won 4-0. I'm not sure if that was the JVs or the varsity. I got to double check on that. But either way, that's a 5A.
I'm to go up against Coeur d'Alene Charter too, who has just been historically very good. Like it wouldn't surprise me if it was the varsity that McCall Donnelly was playing.
Yes. McCall Donnelly is actually right here where I live, Logan. They're up here in North Idaho. They made a little trip. They played yesterday, Coeur d'Alene Charter, and tied 0-0. And then today, Wednesday the 23rd, they're at Timberlake. And so they are coming north to play two of the best teams from the north. To try and send an early message.
And that's good. Like you would rather get an opportunity to play good teams now than have your first shot at some of the best teams in the state at the state tournament, right? You know, you get a good feel of where you're at, where they're at, what, your weaknesses are. You have something to compare to. You can look at numbers and tape all you want, but until there's bodies on the field, you don't know truly how you're going to compare. And this gives them a chance to know what they need to, work on or improve come state tournament time if they get there.
Yeah. Let's flip to girls soccer, and we'll stick at the 3A level where, it was 2 years ago that Homedale had a team for the very first time in girls soccer, Logan. They played kind of a hybrid JV varsity schedule. They went into districts as the automatic lowest seed, got a win at districts, and that kind of opened my eyes. And I said, they probably were ready for a full varsity schedule. Last year, they played in the conference. They did pretty well. And then this year, they opened the season with a 4-0 win over Nampa, a 5A program. Now, Nampa is a little different in girls soccer. They are playing. So we talk about in football a lot where Caldwell has basically said, we're going to play an independent schedule. We're not going to belong to a conference. We're not going to be eligible for the postseason. Nampa is doing that in girls soccer where they're playing some 4As, some 3As, a couple of 5As, but for the most part, Nampa's playing an independent schedule to try and build their program back up. So for Homedale still, though, a 4-0 win over Nampa was pretty impressive to start their season.
Yeah, it doesn't matter that, like you said, that they're kind of going independent, so to say, for this season at least. To beat a school that's probably double your size, right? And a lot more population there in Nampa, obviously. To beat up 4-0, that's not a one, we squeaked by. We got one little lucky break. Like, we dominated. And so that's a great way to start if you're Homedale. And that would be an awesome story if they're able to make a run and maybe, win district or something like that. Obviously there's some really good teams in that conference, like Fruitland specifically, who just ran away from everybody last year. So it'll be fun to watch Homedale this season and see how those girls do this season.
Yeah, Fruitland lost some players to graduation, but bring back a lot of talent. The Grizzlies will make their season debut Thursday, August 24th at home against La Grande, Oregon. And then they will play that same Nampa team on Saturday, Logan. So I know you love the common opponents.
There you go.
So then you can compare, how teams do. So
and it totally matters. It totally matters. It's a complete indicator of what you can do. Just like a couple of years ago in basketball, you could trace Idaho State back to beating Duke in basketball, and they would have won if they play head to head. They would have won. It would have happened.
Duke was too scared. They were.
They were. They didn't want to go play in Pocatello for sure.
For sure. So Homedale's got a young team this year, Logan. A lot of sophomores and even a freshman getting some time on the pitch for the Trojans. In that 4-0 win over Nampa, 2 seniors, 2 sophomores found the back of the net. The seniors were Katie Device and Jacqueline Zavala, and the sophomores were Stephanie Quezada and Morgan Nicoletti. The head coach of the Trojans is Shelby Nicoletti. So this is a Homedale team that could be here to stay for the next couple of years as well. So we'll keep an eye on it.
Yeah, and this is what I said too. Like, we're on our broadcast for the football game. I did the Owyhee game. It just takes time. Like, people, and this is what I wonder about with like college sports, right? And the transfer portal, right? All these people. I'm going to play 2 years at Nevada and then play my final 2 years at Washington State or something like that. If everybody were to do that, that doesn't give your team a lot of gel time. And that, new teams, it's just going to take some time for I've been a Homedale soccer player now for 3 years, not, I just done it for 1 year. A lot of those kids, when they get to varsity in a lot of sports, they've played in the program, right, for 2 years. And then they step in, they've gotten their feet underneath them. They know the program and stuff like that. So I wonder if as you go along, will that help Homedale, right? You can throw in good soccer players as a senior, which is great. But I wonder, having those players that come up in any sport, any new school, anything like that, having the players that come up and get their time in the program, if that helps them out in the long run. And so that you're starting to see that now with them getting there. We've been here for a few years now. We've done this. We know what to do.
Yeah, it's really fun to watch that program continue to grow and get even better. That'd be an incredible story this year if they were able to get to state in girls soccer. Let's move up to the 4A ranks where we had a 4A SIC action last night for the first time. Columbia beats Emmett 5-0. Skyview gets past Ridgeview 2-1. Those are your two leaders. Bishop Kelly was supposed to host Caldwell. That game got wiped out due to inclement weather because of Hurricane Hillary. Brought some thunder and lightning and some rain delays, and they just decided to postpone a bunch of matches last night in the Treasure Valley. Let's talk about at the 5A level. Boise 2-0. 1-0 in league. Same old.
Who would have thought?
Right. Also 1-0 is Timberline. Timberline is 2-1 on the season. They lost to Bishop Kelly 5-3. I think BK girls, of course, are going to be very good at the 4A level. But since then, Timberline goes, okay, we're not messing around. They have beaten Bora and Capital by a combined score of 9-0. So Timberline.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Bora is saying, "Hey, thanks a lot, BK. Thanks for waking up Timberline."
Yeah, right. Well, look at even at Boise, right? Their 2 wins. They beat Rocky 1-0 and then beat Bora 2-1. Not like they were going out and beating the brakes off anybody. Now, you know what? I'm probably wrong because a win is a win. All you need to do is win by 1 point. That's what you need to do. You could win every game by 1 point all year long and you win a championship, right? But just interesting that they've had closer games than maybe some other teams have had.
Yeah, that matchup with Rocky Mountain, of course, was the game that everybody wanted to see. It was on Saturday. Boise wins 1-0 on a goal from senior Sammy Smith. Of course, her older sister, Logan Smith, playing soccer at Stanford. And I feel like Sammy Smith has been a starter since her freshman year. She also runs cross country, so she is very busy in the fall. And I feel like she's one of these athletes that's been there forever. But here she is finally in her senior season. She scores the lone goal for Boise in that 1-0 win over Rocky Mountain. And of course, pitching a shutout in goal as well. So right. Rocky's going to be just fine.
Yeah.
Boise, of course, is going to be good. I think this league has the potential this year. I mean, right now, as you look at it, Logan, you've got 5 teams that are undefeated overall. And if you add in Timberline, who's undefeated in conference play, that's like half the league right there. That's off to a good start.
Yeah. And obviously it gets in, a little messy as the season goes along, but a lot of good teams from what we've seen right now, and we'll see how it shakes out. Even like Middleton sitting at 2-0 right now. That's kind of a little bit surprising. But they made it to state, and when they were a 4A team, right? They were always typically a qualifier there. So throw them into the mix now as well. They've got wins against Eagle and Valley View. So, they're off to a great start too.
Yeah, one set of matches to watch this weekend on both sides of the coin here, I would say. You've got Boise and Timberline in boys soccer traveling over to play Madison and Highland. They'll be at Madison. They'll play back-to-back matches Friday. Then they'll be at Highland on Saturday for back-to-back matches. That could give us an early indication of, okay, how does the East stack up with the West this year? So those would be the matches that I would keep an eye on this weekend, and we'll recap what happened there in girls soccer. Oh, go ahead.
Who's playing when at Madison? Who's playing when at Madison?
So the schedule is Friday at Madison. The first game, I believe, is Highland and Boise. They're going to play at 1:00. And then Madison and Timberline are going to play at 7:00 at night under the
So
lights.
you know at Madison, right? The soccer field is right on the other side of the football field, and they're going to be having the Rocky Mountain Rumble at the same time. So I can watch. I'm going to be at the Rumble, Brandon. I can watch the soccer game at the same time as the football game, right?
Yeah, let me double check that time.
Are they because if they're there, I'm gonna double dip. I'm gonna there's gonna be a timeout on the field. I'm gonna cut over to the Boise soccer game on the other field. I mean, you could see it from Madison from up top. So
yeah, they're playing at 7:00 at Timberline. Where's Westmark Stadium? Is that in Boise?
that's the Hillcrest Stadium.
Okay.
That's Hillcrest's? Is that done?
Oh, yeah. Okay, yes.
It's done?
Yeah. So on Madison's website, they've got them at Timberline. That's not correct, I don't think. I don't think they would drive to Timberline and then come back and play on Saturday against Boise. That doesn't seem right.
Yeah,
I think that match is at Madison, and then Highland was supposed to host the Saturday matches. Their field isn't ready yet, so they're probably playing at Hillcrest as an alternate.
Oh, okay.
Site. So
okay,
that's what's happening.
Oh no, well that's interesting. It'll be fun if they're playing a soccer game over there, a big soccer game at the same time as a football game, essentially 20 feet apart.
Yeah, I guess you'll be our official gauge of whether that match was in Timberline or
whether it happened or not. Yeah, we'll be able to see it. I don't know who's playing. It's not a Madison football game Friday night. Madison plays on Saturday, so I don't think it would be that busy. If it was a Madison home game, it would be
right
packed, right? But it wouldn't be as busy when it's some other teams, especially coming from Utah or California. But should be fun, right? You get the double dip. You get to watch both.
Definitely. And then in girls soccer, the same thing is happening with Rocky Mountain and Timberline. They're playing Madison and Highland as well. So we will have to see how that all shakes out Friday and Saturday. Also in the Valley, a couple of matchups of undefeated teams. Mountain View at Middleton on Friday. Actually, on Thursday, they're both undefeated 2-0. And then you also have on Thursday another matchup of undefeated teams. Owyhee at Kuna, both 2-0 on girls soccer. So we'll keep an eye on those matches as well. All right, let's get into football, Logan. There was a sprinkling of games on the week 1 football schedule. I think the biggest matchup, of course, was this Eagle Meridian showdown. The top 2 teams, Meridian picked to win the Foothills division. I think Eagle picked to win the River division. I can't ever remember which division.
Yeah, I think that's correct.
But I know that they're in opposite divisions, and they were each picked to win their respective division. And this game really lived up to the hype. It was a back and forth affair. Eagle gets the win, 36-33. Davis Harson, new quarterback for Eagle. His dad, Brian Harson, of course, former Boise State and Auburn coach, not doing anything except watching his son play. And Eagle says, yeah, we're glad to have him. Davis Harson, 7-15, 160 yards, 2 touchdowns, also ran the ball 5 times for 68 yards and a touchdown. That is a pretty efficient night.
Yeah, no, that's what you wanted. Your first game, you always wonder, is everybody going to gel, right? And both teams looked good. It lived up to the hype, right? Just a 3-point game, which I believe, obviously we weren't at the game, but from what I can tell, I think it was really the difference came down to missed PATs and then somebody going for 2. I think that's what happened. That's the difference. Eagle went for 2 late in that game to make it a larger lead, but just some, really there wasn't much that separated them. One thing that stood out to me is Meridian didn't give up a lot of points last year. I felt like the defense was very tough, strong, shut out some good teams. And obviously Eagles offense is different, but maybe that Meridian defense lost a few pieces. So we'll see how they adjust. And obviously the offense, looked probably a little bit better, right, than it did in the past as well. The offense puts up 33 points. Great job there from Meridian. But maybe a different team? Is it a team that's going to outscore you rather than grind it out to a 12-6 victory? I don't know. And, maybe does that script flip this year?
Yeah, and for Meridian on offense, more of the same, where last year they ran that wing T and had a stable of backs. They have almost all of those backs returning this year. Marco Del Rio was the top rusher, 130 yards and a touchdown. But all of them can run the ball, including Zeke Martinez, the quarterback. And so for Meridian, I think they're totally fine. Yeah, maybe they'd like to get a couple more stops defensively, but Eagle can say the same thing. Hey guys, we gave up 33 points. So overall, I thought it was a really entertaining game out of the chute in week 0.
Yeah, and it is. Meridian missed an extra point, and then they went for 2 to try and make up for it, and so that's how they got their 33. And that's what it came down to. Even game outside of that, Meridian did have a defensive touchdown in the game. They had a fumble recovery for a touchdown, and that gave them a score there. So really it was that even, right? It came down to just the PATs, but yeah, got to make them, right? It's a key thing to have, right? You got to make those extra points.
Yeah, especially when we get to the playoffs and everything seems to get so much tighter in the postseason, and you get into overtime more, it seems like, once the postseason arrives. So for Eagle, after getting the win, they have a little bye this week. And actually, yes, they have a bye this week, and then they'll be back at it next Thursday at Kuna. And that's a game that we'll have for you on IdahoSports.com. So you'll be able to see Eagle with your very own eyes.
Yeah, and speaking of Kuna, right, they're a team that had a shutout this week, and people, we were there, we broadcasted the game. People were impressed with the Cavemen, and maybe that's a team to look out for after a week 1 shutout.
Yes, definitely. Real quick before we dive into the Kuna game, for Meridian, they are back at it this week. Doesn't get any easier. It's Mountain View in the annual rivalry game.
Yeah, way to go. Way to start your year.
Yeah, Mountain View did not play last week, so they've had an extra week of preparation under their belts for Meridian there. But yeah, you mentioned it, Kuna playing Centennial in the season opener. I think people were impressed with Kuna, certainly, and I was. Austin Latimer was our IdahoSports.com player of the game, 152 yards and a touchdown on the ground. Luke Celto, who's kind of a slot back, he was a big receiver for them last year. He had 102 yards rushing, and I think it was on 8 or 9 carries. It was like a lot of big play yardage for Luke Celto. But I'll tell you, Kuna impressed me, certainly getting the 20-0 win, but I also thought Centennial really impressed me, because Centennial last year loses that game 40-0, not 20-0. I think already with new coach Keelan McCaffrey, you can see they're going to be a lot better on defense.
Right. No, yeah, and that Minico always is good on defense, and so that's going to transfer over. And maybe you don't have as many playmakers on offense as you would like, but you can make up for that on the defensive side with schematics and grit and things like that. And they seem to have done that and stepped that up, and that's that's a tough Kuna squad, right? And but like you said, kudos to Centennial for making obviously I don't think they look at that and say, great, we're heading the right direction. We lost 20-0, but really, like you said, Brandon, they probably did.
Yes. Second straight road game for Centennial this week. They are at Owyhee on Friday night. It'll be the the second game of the year for the Storm, and we'll talk about them next here with Jason Burton, their first-year head coach. For Kuna, they are on the road at Skyview, a 4A opponent that started the year 1-0, and so for Kuna, we'll see how they match up there. But let's talk about Owyhee. This was the game you were at, Logan, on IdahoSports.com. They went all the way over to Rexburg to play Madison. The Storm pick up a 24-17 win. Madison led 7-3. And then there was just kind of this deluge of Owyhee points, and then Madison kind of made it a game late.
Yeah, and the game, very interesting, right? So a lot of the points in this game did not come on long drives. Not even Owyhee's points. They had a pick six. Gage Hawes ran one back for a touchdown. There's one of their scores. The other one came off of a fumble that was recovered at the 5-yard line. So they had a 5-yard drive. And the other touchdown came on a possession where Madison, twice they shanked a punt. I mean, one of them didn't get to the line of scrimmage. The other maybe went 5 yards. But it was like a one-play, 15-yard drive, a run in by their quarterback.
Matt Irwin.
Yeah, Irwin. Yeah, I was like, what? And Irwin ran it in on the right side. So there's 3 of their touchdowns that came virtually off of gifts, and then their field goal, which, by the way, their kicker, Gamet, he's gonna kick a field goal that matters. That kid can boot it. But their 24 points were, I don't want to say gifted. I don't think that's the correct term, but their defense got it for the offense. The offense did not have to do much. They did not have to do a lot to win that game. The defense stepped up. The defense did what they needed to do. They forced turnovers. They put Madison in bad situations. And towards the end of the game, Madison went on a long drive to score. That was the first one either team had done. But, how much of that is why he's saying we've got a comfortable lead. We're just not, we can bend a little bit here. We're just not going to break. And that's exactly what happened. So I think that Hawaii defense, that's something to watch out for right now.
And now they're playing Centennial, right? And that's going to be, I think, another low-scoring game.
3-0.
I don't know if it'll be that low-scoring, but
it'll be. I mean, it's going to come down. Hawaii made less mistakes than Madison. That is essentially what they did. I mean, I tell you what, though, they stopped them. Madison was in the red zone a couple of times, and they shut them down. They made sure that Madison didn't score. They held him out of the end zone. Logan Hostveit had an incredible interception where I thought it was going to be a clear Madison touchdown. The ball kind of floated a little bit. And if you're not a basketball player, I don't think you go up and get that interception. And Hostveit went up and got it and came down with it. It was an awesome pick for him. I'm impressed with the Hawaii defense on Friday.
Yep, and second year in a row, why he opens the season with a tight win over Madison, which ultimately, kept Madison out of the playoffs last year, got Hawaii in. Anytime the Treasure Valley can get these wins over teams from the north, teams from the east, that just means a better chance of getting more teams into the postseason. So let's continue on here. I wanted to highlight Bora and Capital. Bora gets a very tight win, 29-20. I thought this was a good season opener for Capital and their new head coach this season. But for Bora, the story is Trevor McKenna, who is, of course, this great offensive tackle on the O-line, committed to Boise State to be an O-lineman for the Broncos. And yet, Logan, it's on defense where he shines on Friday night, sets a new Bora High School record with 6 sacks in one game.
That's incredible. 6 in a game. You see a lot of people get 10 a year and they're like, man, that guy's a monster. And he got 6 in week 0. So he's already padding the stat sheet right now.
That's crazy.
A lot.
Yeah,
and that's a lot.
This is from an O-lineman. Maybe Boise State's reconsidering. Andy Avalos is like, maybe I should switch him.
Which side should you actually be on here?
Yeah. Also, Javon Nelson, who missed last season with a knee injury, is back this year. And JQ Kenyon, the Bora head coach, talked about it in the preseason. He said, I think Javon could do some special things for us. He rushed for 198 yards and 2 touchdowns. And he also returned a kickoff 68 yards for a touchdown. Parker Rushton, who? That was the big question with Bora. Hey, we're losing our school's all-time leading rusher, Parker Rushton. Javon Nelson's like, dude, I almost got 200 in the first game of the year.
Yeah, and Nelson's kick return, it wasn't like he went up the sideline and he just found some open grass, right? He should have been tackled. I don't know if you've seen the clip of it, Brandon, but it was incredible. It was awesome. He was hit by 3 or 4 people within, 2 or 3 seconds of getting the kickoff. And I think they stopped. I think they thought they had him down and they gave up a little bit and he fought his way out of it, and he went right through the middle with it and then pulled away late to create that separation. That was one of the best kick returns you'll see all year in the state, and it happened week 0.
Yeah, and it really was a backbreaker, I think, for Capital. For Capital, AJ Danaher, new quarterback, he threw 3 touchdowns for the Eagles in the win, and Capital famously missed the playoffs for the first time in like 20 years last year. I think they'll be in the mix to get a playoff spot this year under a new coaching staff there. Let's talk about Rocky Mountain and Middleton, or quickly, I'll tell you where these teams are headed this week. For Bora, after getting that week 1 win, they are going to host Timberline at Donna Larson Park on Friday. Timberline did not play. Actually, Timberline did play. They lost to Boise, and we'll talk about that game in just a second. And for Capital this week, Capital is at Bishop Kelly. It's kind of an interesting 5A, 4A matchup as well.
Yeah, and last year BK had their way with the 5A SIC teams that they played. And I think, they deserved it, right? They went to the state championship. They proved that, there wasn't a lot of teams better than them anywhere in the state, regardless of classification. But Capital, like you said, kind of a weird year for them, not making the playoffs, anything like that. So we'll see how they stand against Bishop Kelly. This is always a thing I wonder about, right? You mentioned this with Mountain View and Meridian, right? Meridian plays a game, Mountain View doesn't. Is it better to have gotten that first game out of the way, or is it better to have had more practice and more time to get things under your belt? Like, what's the trade, right? Did you lose a game because you didn't have that time to prep, or does it bode you better in the future because, well, you know what, I got that game out of the way and now I'm ready to go? I don't know.
Yeah, I think it all depends on how many newcomers you have versus how many veterans are returning, and it is an interesting case study for sure. Let's highlight. We talked about Timberline. Let's mention them quickly. Boise did defeat Timberline 40-28. This was crazy, Logan. Timberline got out to a 28-0 lead, and then Boise scored the next 40, and the game was over. I've never seen that before.
Yeah, to go up 28-0, you think that, I've got this one in the bag. And it's a game last year that Boise shut Timberline out. Like, we were there for that game, and Boise looked really good, and they shut them out. And they kind of do the same thing here. If you take away the first 28 points, go 40 unanswered, you don't see that very often, to have that many points by both teams scored consecutively. And to have a script flipped like that, that's wild.
Yeah, and of course, anytime you're talking about a comeback of that nature, you need some takeaways on defense. But it was Timberline's defense that really was doing the damage against Boise in the early going. 4 interceptions from 2 players. Austin Engroff had 2 for Timberline, and Aiden Nixon had 2. Nixon took one of them back 45 yards for a pick 6. And so, this was a wild game. And it took a long time too. It was one of the last games of the night in the Treasure Valley, because obviously there was a lot of points scored.
And you need, in a game like that, when you have those, you got to use, if your team, relies on your defense to get things done, you got to be able to take advantage of that, right? They got defensive scores. They got a great, I can't think of the word, they spotted them 28 points, right? To, the team said, all right, here's 28 points. Let's just hold the lead, right? And they just couldn't do it. A lot of times just one defensive score, that's going to be a difference for an offense, right? Saying, hey, our defense gave us, some points here. We just got to hold on to the ball, things like that, just make sure we get the win. And they just couldn't do it. And Boise put up a ton of yards too, over 200 yards, both passing and on the ground.
Yeah, it's just crazy. What a wild game. Boise will play Ridgeview this week in a 5A, 4A showdown. And we talked about Timberline already having to get back into it against Bora. And finally, our final 5A game was Rocky Mountain and Middleton. Middleton gets out to a lead. Rocky kind of has a deluge of points. Middleton tries to come back late, but ultimately the Grizzlies get a 31-21 victory. Each team had a pick six, Logan. Brody Swearheart, a 76-yard pick six for Rocky Mountain. Weston Mills, a 70-yard pick six for Middleton.
Yeah, great job. I know Weston personally, so hey, thumbs up, Weston. That was awesome. His mom told me that his head does not fit through the door anymore. If you he's living large right now, but and Middleton too. I guess I wasn't there, but I know they scored a touchdown to cut it to 3. It got called back for a penalty and weren't able to get back on the board again. So and again, Middleton last year, right? They were picked at the bottom of the league, and they end up only with losses. All right, outside of the crossover game to Kuna, they lost to Meridian and they lost to Rocky. That was it. And, the game against Rocky last year was 21-0. And this year, I think they have offense, right? And that was the story. Last year, they struggled. They got shut out there and they got shut out by Meridian. And now they put up 21 points, right? And I think that they're also, again, I think people put them down and they're better than what people are than what people thought. I think that they will do well this year. But then Rocky Mountain, that was a question, right? They lost a ton to college, right? A lot of Division I players lost from that Rocky Mountain team. No big deal. We'll still go out and put up 31 points and win a game big.
Yeah, that was a huge win for Rocky Mountain. They are 1-0. Gunnar Thompson, 195 yards, 2 touchdowns passing. Check out this wide receiver, Jaron Akebe. I hope I said that right. 13 receptions for 87 yards and a touchdown. That is the definition of a chain mover right there.
Oh, yeah.
So way to go, Jaron Akebe, for Rocky Mountain. So Middleton will be on IdahoSports.com this Friday night, Logan. It's our Treasure Valley game night as the Vikings host Nampa. It'll be the season opener for the Bulldogs. These were the two kind of out of nowhere success stories last year, right? Nampa took second in its division last year. They went 7-3. They lost a lot to graduation, and they've got a new head coach in David Sandow. It's going to be really exciting to see how they look in the season opener for Middleton. Of course, Bill Brock's been there for 20 plus years. We talked about, and how did they rebound after a tight loss against Rocky? That'll be Friday night on IdahoSports.com. Doesn't cost you a nickel to watch it. So that's Nampa at Middleton. And for Rocky Mountain, they're going up to Coeur d'Alene to play the Vikings in a true road game. All Coeur d'Alene did was beat Rigby on Friday night.
That should be a great game. And like you said, Brandon, this could be a huge win for the Treasure Valley in the 5A SIC. I know teams like Bishop Kelly, people love to not like them, right? And same thing with Rocky, right? I've been around here for a few years. I don't care. I don't care who you are. If you're a Meridian, if you're Mountain View, Middleton, you want Rocky to win that game. You are on your hands and knees begging for Rocky to win that, because that is going to explode. Like, that's going to help everyone, because you're already looking at it. You're already looking at whether it's right or wrong. We're looking at max preps, and it matters, right? And at those rankings, and Coeur d'Alene beats Rigby, who's going to be good. You were there, Brandon, and so maybe you can tell us more about it, but they're still going to be good. Yeah, they lost to Coeur d'Alene, but they're going to be good. They're going to be a playoff team. That's just who Rigby is. Coeur d'Alene beat them. And I think in the coaches poll, isn't Coeur d'Alene picked behind Post Falls and Lewiston, if I remember right? Yeah. But if it's going to have ripple effects, right? If Rocky wins that game, all of a sudden Rocky Mountain brings home a victory over a team that already had a big victory. Like, it's going to help. And then, it's going to help everyone. It helps the entire SIC if Rocky can win that game. And then conversely for the, up north, if Coeur d'Alene wins that game, they have wins over potentially one of the best teams in the 5A SIC, and then potentially the best team over in Eastern Idaho. All of a sudden now it's big. It's a big game. Coeur d'Alene is playing middleman for every conference in the state right now.
And this is the type of game that you want live announcers at. And it's to add all this context to the matchup for sure.
Yeah,
that would be a good game for anyone to cover, but we are going to be elsewhere. So Coeur d'Alene, I will say really quickly, that defense is no joke. They got 4 interceptions against Rigby. Their quarterback is going to D1 Montana. So that's
no wonder. No wonder. Go figure.
You know, my brother was running the camera for me, and he looks over and he goes, "The Grizz signed this guy." And I said, hey, you got to relax. Like, Luke Flowers is very good. He threw for over 3,000 yards last year. That's is just
more Coeur d'Alene defense than Flower. He is, state championship quarterback. Like, that guy's real good.
Yes. Coeur d'Alene's got 2 Division I players on its defense. Linebacker Shea Robertson, who's going to Eastern Washington. Defensive end Camden DeGraw, who's going to Washington State. So that defense is no joke. And then Carson Spielman, running back for Coeur d'Alene, had his way. He was hurt after the 3rd game last year. And if he's healthy for the full season, that makes a big difference, certainly. But that's going to be a really fun game to watch. 4A. We had Columbia and Skyview both in action against Nevada opponents. Both go 2-0. Skyview gets a very tight 29-26 win over Elko. Elko came to Skyview last year and just blew them out. So this is a big turnaround and a big difference for Skyview. New quarterback, Cash Buse. He transferred from Melba to Skyview. He scored on a 2-yard touchdown run with 30 seconds to play to give Skyview the win. So he led the team down the field, 2-minute drill. Then he punches it in. Overall stats we saw a lot at Melba. 9 of 14, 111 yards, 3 touchdowns, 107 yards, and a touchdown rushing. He could be a difference maker in that entire conference for Skyview.
He could. Yeah. Really, outside of Bishop Kelly, it was up for grabs last year. Emmett's always strong as well, but the bottom, unfortunately, it is what it is. No one's saying anything that, it's not trying to dog anybody, but the bottom of the 4A SIC has struggled the last few years. And there's opportunities, right, to be had. And maybe he's a big difference maker in that and pushes them up. And, the SIC has struggled compared to North Idaho and Eastern Idaho in football lately at the 4A level, right? Right. Bishop Kelly gets to the state championship and has a real hard time against Skyline. Skyline is just on another level right now. But, does Cash Buse come in and make a difference and at least, give a little more competition here to the league and makes things a little more interesting come state tournament time? I feel like there's no 4A. If you win a game at the 4A level, you're going to the tournament. You're going to state. There's there's 24 4A teams and 16 get in.
It's a lot.
It's so, you never know, right? In 4A, you probably going to state.
Skyview famously went 2-7 last year, or 3-6 maybe, and got a playoff spot. So just is what it is.
It is. It's just the way the format is right now, and he could make a difference, especially in the league. I think he will make a difference to have an athlete like that behind center. It's good for Skyview.
Yeah. Meanwhile, Columbia says we've got a pretty good quarterback too. Columbia beats Albert H. Lowry High School from Nevada. I don't know who Albert Lowry is, but he's got a school named after him. They won 51-30. Jared Payne, 161 yards, 3 touchdowns passing, 72 yards and a rushing touchdown on the ground. But he also was the top tackler on defense. He had 9 tackles and a sack. So Jared Payne doing it all for Columbia. That was huge.
Yeah, and there's another athlete, right? We just talked about Buse being a great piece there for Skyview. Now Columbia has also got one that's playing both ways, and that's just what we need here in the SIC. I think some of these great athletes that teams can rely on in a tough situation. Say, all right, this isn't working. Let's adjust to this. We got a guy that can do both, and having a player like that will be huge for Columbia.
Definitely. The schedule this week in the 4A SIC, a lot of these we've already talked about. Ridgeview playing Boise Thursday night at Donna Larson Park. Capital is going to go to Bishop Kelly on Friday. You've also got Kuna traveling to Skyview. Those are the 5A versus 4A matchups. Columbia is going to be at Fruitland. Season opener for the Grizzlies under head coach Jordan Gross. That'll be a really interesting game to keep an eye on.
Yeah.
And then we've got some 4A versus 4A matchups. Caldwell, we talked about kind of playing this independent schedule. They lost to Payette, and we'll talk about that in just a second, but they're traveling to Canyon Ridge. First game under new coach Juan Alvarado for the Riverhawks over there in Twin Falls. But the two games I'm most intrigued to see, you've got Emmett at Blackfoot. Blackfoot lost a ton to Graduation. They were picked dead last in the preseason coaches poll over in East Idaho. Emmett, of course, is expected to be good. So really, I'm using this game to gauge, okay, how much did Blackfoot really drop off? I know Emmett's going to be good. But then I think the best non-conference game is Valley View at Twin Falls. Valley View with the new head coach and Bryony Robinson. They've got, it sounded like with Lane Coffin retiring, maybe they were going to get away from the wing tee a little bit, but maybe not. Maybe they're going to just keep running the rock, it sounds like. And Twin Falls is a big, heavy favorite over in District 4. So this will be, to me, the game to keep an eye on. Yeah, and Valley View is just a team that causes, I feel like when they play a non-conference game, they cause people problems. I mean, 2 years ago, they beat Minico in the playoffs. Last year, they had them on the ropes. And so Valley View is just one of those teams that I feel like they always play up to who they're playing, especially in a situation like this. So it'll be fun to see what they can do under a new coach and if they're ready for the challenge. And obviously, if you're an SIC fan, that would be a big win, right? Again, we talked about that with Rocky. But if you go over there and you beat Twin Falls, who's been picked to win the league, and you bring that win back, that again will help everyone. Yeah, for sure. So let's go to the 3A level. There was one game. It was the Kip Crofts Bowl, Logan. Kip Crofts' old team, Payette, versus his new team, Caldwell. Kip Crofts, of course, has had a long history of turning around programs, including at Payette. He took a Payette team that went winless for several years and got them to middle of the pack in the league standings the last couple of seasons. And now he's trying to do the same at Caldwell. Caldwell is playing an independent schedule. They play Payette in the season opener last Saturday. Really tight game. Payette led 14-12 at halftime. They end up winning 36-30. The game was kind of herky-jerky. There was 2 lightning delays where they had to stop play, and so it's hard to kind of get a rhythm. But I think for both teams, this was pretty encouraging stuff for Caldwell that they hung close in a tight competitive game, and for Payette to get the first win under new coach Kurt Taylor. Yeah, to put up a bunch of points too. And I mean, even Brandon, you talked about Payette. They didn't even have a team a couple years ago. They didn't even field a team, and to be where they're at now, that's awesome. But to both teams, their offenses to put up that many points, it's encouraging. I think that's the word to come out of this game is it's encouraging for both sides, because nobody wants to see Caldwell continue to be where they're at. It's only good for everybody if Caldwell can get, be competitive again, and it would be great for everyone. So good for Caldwell, good for Payette. That's good for everyone, I think, to see a close game and a high-scoring game for both sides. Definitely. Payette will now host New Plymouth this Friday. New Plymouth making their season debut, the 2A Pilgrims, under new coach Tony Cade. We'll see how that goes. Other games on the schedule, McCall Donnelly is going to host Wood River. Wood River's 1-0. They got a tight win over South Fremont. You've got Weiser at Buell. That, to me, is the creme de la creme matchup. Yeah. We talked about Fruitland hosting Columbia. You've also got Filer at Homedale and Parma hosting Cole Valley Christian, who we'll talk about here in a second. But to me, it's Weiser and Buell. This was a playoff matchup a year ago. Or was it a regular season matchup a year ago? It was week 1. Yeah. Week 1 of the regular season. We were there for it. And Buell, Weiser won, but Buell was not. They were in it, right? They hung around. They were there, and Buell probably has gotten obviously better. And I think maybe a lot of people are high on Buell. I think maybe they're taking that next step. And Kimberly's been the one in that league the last year or so, but maybe Buell can make that step. Yeah, so Buell lost that game last year 24-0, and then they didn't lose again in the regular season. They actually won the conference last year. Buell did, and got to the quarterfinals, almost to the semifinals of the playoffs. And that was a deceiving 24-0. Like I said, I think it was 7-0 at half. Like, it wasn't as bad as the score looked. Like, I remember walking away thinking that's not a bad Buell team.
It's hard to see that on paper, right? 24-0, but just like we talked about with Centennial, right? They lost 20-0, but it's sometimes it's a different feel.
Yep, definitely. So season opener for both of those teams. Weiser at Buell, I would say, is the 3A game of the week to keep an eye on. 2A, we had Coal Valley Christian in action against Wendell. They hosted Wendell at Owyhee while their new school is being constructed. Coal Valley is going to play their home games at Owyhee this year. Wendell gets the 28-14 win. I think Coal Valley Christian, they lost so much to graduation, and I think they are kind of undergoing an offensive shift where they've kind of been a sling the ball around team the past couple of years to this year. I think they're really going to be focused on running the rock and trying to play tight defense. But in this league, Coal Valley Christian was picked behind Nampa Christian. And then there's still Melba. I think that's in the mix as well. So the league as a whole may be down a little bit, but compared to statewide, but I think at the top, you still are going to see really good competition between Nampa Christian, Coal Valley Christian, Melba, and even New Plymouth could be a wild card in this thing.
Yeah, and Nampa Christian, they have a great gauge stick game, right, to open their season against Declo, right? And Declo has been a traditional power in 2A, not over the last 3 or 4 years, but it's them and Westside like for the past 10 years up until it was one of those two was winning a state championship. And they're still a good team. They're a great program that Declo has. And so Nampa Christian's going to get a good opportunity to open things up against a good Declo team.
Yes, that is the game of the week. Certainly Nampa Christian at Declo. We talked about Coal Valley is going to play Parma. It's the season opener for the Panthers. They've got a new coach, Jerome Bell. A lot of experience in a lot of different places. I really want to see Parma, climb and get on that trajectory.
Right.
Shea McClellan's going to beat me up if I don't mention Marcin. Marcin, of course, last year played at Orofino in their season opener, got a win, and then kind of struggled the rest of the way with youth and injuries and that sort of thing. They're hosting Orofino in their season opener this Friday. Good chance for the Huskies to start 1-0 once again under Coach Shea McClellan. We talked about New Plymouth and Payette, and then Melba making the long road trip all the way over to Salmon. I think Melba knows, hey, we're probably going to have to hit the road at some point in the playoffs. We might as well get used to what a long trip looks like, and we're going to go over to Salmon. Melba should get a win there, though, for sure. So let's talk about 8-man football. We had one game. It was a 1A D1 versus a 1A D2. Horseshoe Bend defeats Wilder 52-8. Now, this final score is a little deceptive because Wilder's starting quarterback got injured pretty early on in the contest. And in 8-man football, I mean, you lose your quarterback and you've got to shift 4 different guys to 4 different positions to account for the loss. So it was really hard for Wilder. Will Henneke, our co-host on the Idaho 8-Man Prepcast, actually went to that game. So he says Wilder's starting quarterback won't play for another couple of weeks. Knee injury from last year. Okay, so he wasn't even in the game. I misread that. And then they lost one of their top athletes to an injury about 2 minutes into the game.
Yeah. So you can't afford that. Like most 8-man teams, I mean, some of them are just dominant and they're going to have, 15 different athletes and all that. But, a lot of teams have 2 guys that do a bulk of the offense. And if you don't have one or both of them, that's 25% of your guys on the field. They're, with less players, it's a bigger hit in 8-man.
Yeah. So they lost. So Gephardt is the starting quarterback. Kyvan Gephardt, he's a junior. He did not play in the game. And then they lost Isaac Rodriguez, who plays quarterback, running back, DB, 2 minutes into the contest for Wilder. That's a tough blow. They've got a new coach this year in Jeremy Bailey. He has been at Wilder the past couple of years, kind of teaching and coaching, and he coached the pole vaulters at BYU at one point in his life, Logan. So this is a high caliber coach that Wilder's got. For Horseshoe Bend, I mean, man, they looked good. I watched this game on film a little bit, and Carson Drake threw 4 touchdown passes to Kalen Jones, 57, 53, 50, and then a 21-yarder. I mean, that's just impressive.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, and then, they're going through a transition, right? They had Meyer as their quarterback forever, and so now they're taking a shift, and seems like they haven't skipped a beat. I mean, that's to put up that many points first week of the year against Wilder. Yeah, that's impressive.
Yep. So the 8-man schedule this week looks like this: Idaho City at Cascade, season opener for both of those teams. You've got Raft River traveling over to Tri-Valley. That's going to be an intriguing one. A lot of coaches are high on Tri-Valley this year. They've got the reigning 100-meter dash champion lining up in the backfield, Clayton Harper, for Tri-Valley. He won the 100 at state last year. You've got Rimrock at Glens Ferry. And then if we look at what's going on with the 1A D2s, you've got Garden Valley at Dietrich, I think is going to be a really fun game. Horseshoe Bend started 1-0. They're hosting Hagerman. Salmon River is at Lewis County as well. And then 2 games for you on IdahoSports.com, Logan. The first one is 1A D1 matchup. Notice traveling to Clearwater Valley. This is a game that I will be on the call for Friday night, Logan. I think this is going to be a really interesting game. Notice is kind of the league favorite from District 3, even with a couple of injuries. Clearwater Valley took second last year, nearly won the White Pine League. This could be like a, top 5 showdown.
Yeah, and I think they played last year down in Notice, and so now Notice making the trip up there. That one should be a great matchup. Notice lost a couple of guys to graduation, so again, it's always who's going to step in and fill those shoes and who's going to step up. Obviously they've been able to just plug in new athletes and it hasn't been a problem for Notice. So we'll see who maybe those new faces are with, Woodland out of there and not there anymore.
Yeah, it's going to be they still have Benny Guevara to quarterback the offense for Notice. So, yeah, that's going to be a fun matchup. We also have on IdahoSports.com Council traveling into the Tigers Den to play Kendrick on IdahoSports.com. Council, of course, won the Long Pin Conference last year. They got to the quarterfinals, Logan, and this was a crazy game with Castleford last year in the quarterfinals. It was played in Council, and it was just a snowstorm. There was like a foot of snow on the ground. Castleford won 6-0. Basically, there was a botched handoff, and I say botched. I mean, in the weather, they missed the handoff and fumbled. Castleford recovered like right near the goal line, punched it in for a 6-0 win. And that was it. Council's season was over. Yeah. I know they're very motivated to do well again this year, and no better way than to open against the juggernaut that is Kendrick, the 2-time defending 1A D2 champs.
And I think that's who they would have played in the next round. It would have been Kendrick.
Yes.
And I'm pretty sure that Castleford went up and played them in Lewiston. But yeah, there's no better measuring stick than Kendrick, and that is just a juggernaut, right? They had young guys a couple of years ago, and that was their key. That was their glue, and they are very good, and they just got better, and those guys are still there, and it's going to be tough for Council, but a great way to start off your year going up and playing Kendrick. If you lose it, nobody blames you. If you play well and you still lose, people are like, whoa, not bad. I don't think anybody is going to say, man, something's wrong with Council if they struggle in this game, because Kendrick is just that good.
Yeah, it'll be a really fun game. That will also be on IdahoSports.com. Volleyball starts this week, Logan. We did a season preview prepcast I did with Lindsay Togiai Afuk. She's kind of our volleyball analyst. She'll be back with every week this fall with her weekly column, Keeping Up with the Kill, kind of keeping you up to date on what's going on in the volleyball scene. We did a long preview yesterday where we talked about 5A all the way down to 1A D2. You can check that out on the IdahoSports.com YouTube channel, Facebook page. It's also in the podcast feed for the Treasure Valley Prepcast. You should definitely give it a listen for all your volleyball content. This weekend, 2 big tournaments. You've got the Peg Peterson Invitational, of course, that Highland High School in Pocatello hosts every year. It's one of the biggest regular season meets. Centennial has been there the past couple of years. There's going to be a few teams from from the Valley traveling over. And then locally, the Kuna Classic with a K, of course. The Kuna Classic will host, 8 to 10 local teams. Maybe an Oregon team comes over. This was the tournament last year, Logan, where Horseshoe Bend defeated Boise High, 1A D2, beating a 5A.
Yeah, that's the ultimate David and Goliath, right? To have a school that small beat Boise, I think, is second or third biggest in the state in terms of school population. I think Mountain View's the highest. But anyways, a great win last year. So fun stories for sure to come out of some of these tournaments, just like they did last year.
Yep. For volleyball, I think you can pretty much mark it down. 2 state championships at least coming back to the Treasure Valley with Skyview at the 4A level, Horseshoe Bend at the 1A D2. They are just head and shoulders above everybody else. So, we'll be back with more great volleyball and other content next week. Oh, we ran long again. So moving forward on the show, there's so much to cover. I think, we really dove into every football matchup.
Yeah, we did.
It's
different week 0. There's just so few that next week there's like everybody's playing. And so if we don't talk about your team, don't take it personal, please.
Yes. I mean, we would be here for 4 hours. So next week, I promise the show will be a little on the shorter side, definitely. And we will just kind of really quickly hit the big stories. But if there is something you want us to specifically talk about, like Bishop Kelly, Caldwell boys soccer, send us an email, Brandon@IdahoSports.com, Logan at IdahoSports.com, and we would be glad to spend a little time deep diving into the topic you want us to cover. So, okay. Logan, thank you so much for doing this.
Should be another fun week. We've got a ton of broadcasts this weekend. So if you can't find something to watch, that's your fault. There are like 10 broadcasts, I think, on Friday, and then 3 on Saturday or more. There's a lot of broadcasts this weekend to watch.
Yeah, it's all on the game streams tab across the top of the homepage at IdahoSports.com. All right, for Logan Green, I'm Brandon Baney. Thanks for tuning into the Treasure Valley Prepcast on IdahoSports.com.